Nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. Nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. Nothing gonna take my love from me, not fear, not greed, not jealousy. Nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. Beautiful. May my eyes be bright and may my heart be light. May my hands be filled with grace. When the shadows fall, let me light them all. Let me smile in trouble's face. I am love in truth. I taste love in spite. I breathe out, I breathe love on fire. My ego exhales and lets go now, now. I am love. Y'all sing it with me here. Well, hey, love ain't gonna take my love from me, no, no. Love ain't gonna take my love from me, no, 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 no. Hey, love ain't gonna take my love from me, not fear, not greed, not jealousy. Nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no.
Guys, thank you so much for coming out in this blizzard. I know it's a real deal tonight, so I appreciate you guys being here. And congrats on 30 PechaKuchas, and congratulations on the poster. It's really an accomplishment. It's well done. We're designers. We're married. We work together. We solve creative problems for a wide range of clients and industries. So, Louis Carnegie, he's not my dad. He's not on the payroll. He is unavailable for portfolio reviews and interested in how to bundle the phone and internet. He is a combination of last names, a work of fiction, something we use to our advantage. These two books are done by illustrators Mark Todd and Scott Nash on who Louis might be.
So we didn't want to stand up here and just talk about our work. You can get that from our website. What we can tell you is that we're visual communicators and we're problem solvers. And although we're really good at what we do and we have great clients, we wanted to talk to you about how we are creating community and how we're connecting to those people and what we're getting out of it. So about 8 years ago, we moved into our studio. It's a great location. It has a backyard. It has a gallery. It gave us plenty of room to do our work, but it also was a blank canvas. So before we even moved in, we did what anyone would do. We had a big party. We hired a bunch of bands and had a South by Southwest party.
So back in 2009, the Austin creative landscape was very different than it is now. There wasn't co-working spaces like you see all over the place these days. If you were freelancing or before projects, you had Bolden Creek, you had Spider House, you had the library where you could go and meet friends and discuss work. We were okay with people hanging out in our space and doing work. And some of those people were the guys from the Creative Worker Unions who asked us if we wanted to bring Aaron Droplin to town. Before the first rent check was sent in, we had him doing a lecture. It was a hit, and we were soon working on a variety of different functions: designers, illustrators, photographers, typographers, Dana Tamachi, Chip Kid.
So we have a long history of working with the creative community. Sean is a founding member of the Austin AIGA chapter. He helped produce events for AIGA and several other nonprofits, events like AIGA's Design Ranch, a hands-on no-tech retreat coming up on its 20th year pretty soon. So it was a natural progression to start producing events in our own backyard. And so he kept going, and by proxy, so was I. Sean and I complement each other creatively. He's always got his foot heavy on the gas, and I'm pumping the brakes, and together we somehow keep this car on the road.
Wendy does pump the brakes, but she also keeps the gas in the car. Her years of Pentagram taught her what a home run looks like, and she's always up to talking about unconventional ideas. Having a gallery, but not in the gallery business, there was an option to do some ideas that may not be fully realized. I started shooting Polaroid packed film as a way to document their East Austin neighborhood. It's an imperfect medium. At best, rough, raw, outdated, and at $3 an image, you quickly figure out how light meters work, f-stop math, the best kind of scans, do-it-yourself framing, and print archiving. During East Austin tour, we started this story of forgotten landmarks, secret beaches, hobo trains, dam fishing, swimming spots, and skateboarding.
So this is Tinkles. This was an ad-fed event that had a pretty low turnout. And a point being, some of our ideas don't always work. There is so much going on in Austin that, it's hard to compete, and, we're okay with that. We've learned to adjust expectations. For us, a 10-minute conversation with somebody we haven't seen in a while is a success. And, sometimes success is just hanging out in the backyard, drinking beer, barbecue, and listening to records. And sometimes it's pie. Everybody lives along over pie. We like to think of the gallery at Louis Carnegie as a non-competitive, easygoing space that creatives can come and hang out at, and we think it's working.
Last year during South by, when Kesha stopped by, we played it cool AF. We do our best to be good neighbors and believe successes isn't always measured by more is better. The carrot for us is something simpler. How can you facilitate meaningful connections with 100 of our new best friends? One of our favorite long-standing nonprofit partner is the Austin Bat Cave. They work with students developing creating and writing skills. All their programming is free. In the past 10 years, we've hosted readings, meetings, auctions, workshops, as well as managed design projects, including a recent rebranding, several printed anthologies, and fundraisers.
So, just to give you an idea of what we've been up to, this is what we've done in the past year. We hosted gallery shows for the amazing Hancock brothers, the 59 Parks poster series, a Pecha Kucha retrospective poster show for Pentagram Design featuring industry print shop and music by Darden Smith, gallery shows for friends who are sometimes showing the work for the first time, including Jessica Fontenot, Ian Kasnoff, Prentice Douthit, Sev Corson, and John Dromgoole. We had our own lecture series on sustainable design, and we had 2 discussion panels for Austin Design Week, and of course AIGA's ongoing Under the Radar series that included lectures by Lauren Dickens and Brooke Robinson.
We closed out last year with Deeds Fest, a benefit that supports Wendy Davis's nonprofit Deeds Not Words. We are involved in our share of nonprofit design projects. We think Austin and our profession are better of it, and we feel personally fulfilled. It's time well spent. It is important that the gallery be sustainable. Expenses are covered through event rental, off-site meeting, and production work. Building sets for movies, Criterion throwbacks, independent films, editorial photography, vinyl appreciation parties, and YouTube green screen rants are all the way we use this space.
So the payoff for us is that we get inspiration in collaborating with these people. This is all fun, but it also inspires us to raise the bar with our own work. By seeing and hearing what creatives are up to in our own space, that just helps give us new perspective on some of the things that we are working on. And by the way, this is where we work. It's a smaller garage studio behind the gallery. So we will keep doing this as long as we can. We're always thinking about what's that next thing. Sean's been thinking about laying the groundwork to start on an Austin Design Archive. If you're curious about what we're up to or want to attend anything in the future, we encourage you to just come to our website, sign up for emails, and you'll get emails. Thank you, Austin.
I've drawn and journaled for as long as I can remember. These simple composition books are my current favorite. They're soft and forgiving, and even better, they match my company's logo perfectly. In my professional life, drawing comes in pretty handy. This client liked my drawing so much that in a single meeting, he approved the entire project. And of course, for my firm, that has never happened before. And we gave it a code name. It was called When Pigs Fly. So if pigs can fly, then maybe dogs can fly too. This is my brother's dog, Athena, who lived with me for 2 years while my brother ran away to Japan to find himself. I'm not sure how dogs and beautiful lobbies relate, but somehow, in my head anyway, they do. Which leads me to my Japanese mother, who was the first person in our family to draw. She was born in 1940, and after the war, they had nothing, so she got herself to America just as fast as she could. A rather obnoxious shopaholic, she was still a very talented artist. My earliest journals were the simple letters I wrote to my grandpa when I was a kid. Dear Shawna, I guess it's time for me to write you back. Your handwriting has improved so much. Just keep it that way and you'll do just fine. So this is my actual journal from high school, and why I still have it, I have no idea. Clearly still working on the handwriting. Sometimes I really wonder if Grandpa was telling the truth. This is my journal from the semester I spent studying in England. It's about this time that I began a lifelong obsession for small bits of paper. Today, we went to a bar called 42 and attempted to get wasted, but the drinks were too expensive. After college, I moved to Austin. It was 1993 and the jobs were scarce, and every day I combed the want ads. Wanted, millwork expert for the interior renovation of the state capitol. Must have experience, must be able to draw. It was a long shot, but I got the job. And that job landed me an even better job that took me to Houston, where I worked for a big name architect with big name clients, and I still kept journaling, and I kept on drawing. And even though the drawings were work-related, I still personalized them, improvising pockets where I could stash those small bits of paper, like my horoscope, and the Linda Berry comics that mirrored the melancholy part of my personal life. My career was going great, but my self-esteem had been crushed by a recent divorce. And for the next decade, I found myself stuck in dead-end relationships. So I journaled my way to the other side. And when I felt exceptionally down, I would often draw a picture of myself surrounded by all the people that loved me. This ritual made me feel better and less alone. Sometimes life really does give you a second chance. Being single isn't all that bad. It meant spectacular trips doing what designers do best, which is shopping. This was the same posse of women that I was with the night I met my husband. He actually had the courage to challenge this group of girls to a friendly game of pool at the Continental Club, and the rest is history. 3 months later, we were engaged, and 3 months after that, we were married. I was in Houston, he was in Austin, so we met in airports and faraway cities. We learned to surf, we ate and drank well. My life went from drab, black, and white to full-on Technicolor. So 3 years, 3 miscarriages, and 300 needles. The twins came early, and the NICU nurses taught us well. We learned to journal every vital statistic we ate, slept, pooped, and repeated. It was mind-numbing but necessary because it meant the difference between death and survival for all 4 of us. So to go from no kids to identical kids, your life takes on a sudden metamorphosis. You become incredibly organized, and I found such sanity and calm keeping these journals while my kids were tiny. For me, the journals represented control and order. And as a twin mom, to preserve your sanity, you learn to organize and schedule everything. Your journal is your friend for play dates, meal plans, and when to do yoga. And for this image reminds me and represents a time management masterpiece. And then something amazing happens. Your twins turn 7 and they start to keep journals of their own. And your journals and their journals are so incredible that you don't even miss the fact that you don't get to journal anymore. And then there are some journals that are never meant to be used, like these, that'll always probably stay empty. In fact, the world is full of empty journals. And I've spent many years trying to encourage the people around me to do more journaling. But it's kind of like exercise. Some people just aren't into it. So I thought if I made the journals myself, that would change things. But nope, they still stay empty. I gave this one to my mom for her birthday, and I said, just journal stories about me. And after she passed away, I knew there was a good chance that I would find it empty, but it wasn't. Dear Shawna, today is your birthday. I cannot believe it. So many years I still remember you, so small, long leg. Well, today you are 100% lady. Smart, kind, you do wonderful things. I am really proud of you.
So as I mentioned, I've actually done this 3 times, and this is really a huge compliment that they would ask me to come back. A third time, I was like 5th down the list, I think, of people that they needed to replace some people who dropped out. But the first one was on DJ and how, I was trying to figure out how to become a photographer, well-known, get in front of the people that really matter to me. And he taught me a lesson about doing really great personal work. But today I want to talk about passion and work, not just personal work. And so in 2014, I got my pilot's license, which was something that I'd always wanted to do since I was a little kid. And thankfully, I posted, I post a lot about myself on Twitter and Instagram like everybody else. And a photo editor by the name of Leslie Baldwin from Texas Monthly saw it. And shortly thereafter, she had me in a plane flying to Pinto Canyon and photographing the canyon for this story on what it would be like to fly through and experience that part of the country. And while I was out there, she asked me if I had any photo essay ideas, and I told her about this idea about flying around the entire state of Texas and photographing it from the air. And now, mind you, by the time I did this, I kind of retired from photography. I had a business that had taken off, and I had moved on to other things. And I was working, I was basically the CEO of this retail business that I'd founded, but I was still shooting a little bit on the side, and I was posting about all this stuff that I was really, really passionate about, and I was scratching that creative itch that had kind of fallen by the wayside as I was looking at balance sheets and income statements. And thankfully, she reached out, and I was posting about all this stuff, and I basically she called me and said, do you want to do that Fly Around Texas project? So I jumped at the chance. We planned aggressively. We decided, let's go ahead and do this in July of 2015. So a year after I got my license, we commenced the project, and that's what we're talking about today. We planned to take off in the morning. I would shoot in the mornings, fly around for a little while, and then land in a bunch of different airports around the perimeter of the state of Texas. And I would go home and let's see, I'd land each night, and I was planning to try to edit as much as I could. So there were thousands and thousands of photos being generated every day. The first of which that first portion was generated out off of Matagorda Bay. I grew up on the Gulf Coast, so I thought it was important to focus on that area initially. And eventually, I would land in Marshall, Wichita Falls, Dalhart, Littlefield, Andrews, El Paso, Marfa, Brownsville, and Mustang Beach. When I originally had the idea for the project, it was less of a landscape project and more of a study on color and the way that if you shoot thousands of photos of the entire perimeter, the color would transition and you would see this progression of the landscape as you go over it. But I shot detailed photos like this with handheld Mamiya medium format, and I shot overhead photos like this with GoPros that were attached to the camera or to the plane on the wing and to the exterior of the body of the camera. The most common question I get is, how did you manage to fly the freaking plane and take the pictures? And it's actually fairly simple. when you're flying a plane, they tend to kind of just like keep doing what you tell them to do. So they don't like fall out of the sky. It was fairly easy to kind of set it up and then stick your head out the window and shoot straight down for a few minutes. The GoPros were really only complicated by the fact that the ones on the wings were a little difficult to reach. So whenever I wanted to get something like this, I'd have to connect to with my phone via Wi-Fi, check out what I was flying over, decide whether or not it was worthwhile photographing, and then I'd hit the time-lapse button and let it run, every 2 seconds and capture whatever I thought was worthwhile. So, we'd go, I'd fly directly over and eventually go find the picture that was worth editing. In instances like this, I'd see my portrait down below. There's a tiny little shadow right there. And I would use one of the cameras that was on the wing, and I would bank the photograph to capture these self-portraits. So, ultimately, I'd pour through these thousands of images when I got back to the hotel. I would land in the different airports. I'd grab a cab if one existed. If I was in a place like Dalhart where they don't, I would hop on a little fold-up bike that I had purchased, and I'd ride to the airport and pour through the thousands and thousands of images, which was a ton of work after having already flown, 6 or 7 hours a day. But I shot nearly 44,000 images on the trip. 2.5 years have passed, and the crazy thing is that I'm still finding pictures that I haven't even seen before, which seems kind of crazy, but you can really hold your finger on the right arrow button and just stream through photos, and it's like watching a video. But in the 36 hours in that little 4-seater plane, the really nice thing about flying on Sauceda Airlines is that you can listen to your own music, there are no crying babies, and you're not fighting anybody for elbow room on the armrest. My honky tonk playlist had a few spins, and I remember specifically when I was taking this photo, or the previous photo, Tanya Tucker singing Delta Dawn to me. So my only major complaint was that I shot it in July, and in the air that's fine when you're like a few thousand feet up because it's nice and cool, but on the ground it's really hot, and so it feels like the Sahara Desert. This isn't the Sahara Desert, this is South Padre Island. But of the 44,000, you've only seen a small subset of the entire project, and I can definitely say that of all the projects that I've gotten to work on, I was primarily a portrait photographer for the nearly 10 years that I shot. This was the most gratifying project, and it was a fulfillment of a lifelong dream. It only took me being retired for about 2 years to get my first Texas Monthly cover. I wasn't even shooting anymore before they offered that to me. And ultimately, what I learned from that was that it wasn't just about doing personal work. The thing that really resonated with people that drew them in to work with me even after I'd retired was passionate work. And so what I've realized is that if we're looking for the projects that can develop and solidify our creative legacies, the place to start our search is at the intersection between of what we're passionate about and what we're damn good at doing. And so that's the lesson that I learned from this. I hope you guys got something out of it. And if you're interested, there's a book coming out. DJ's pimping it out because Barrett from his team is designing it for me, and I've got a exhibit at the Bob Bullock Museum coming out in January. So thanks.
I'm Anna. I'm a fashion stylist. I've been doing this for about 10 years. But ever since I was a kid, I loved using clothing as a creative outlet. That's why I chose this job, is so that I could keep doing that. And I love this job. I also have a super hard time explaining what this job is exactly. Basically, I dress models and celebrities / see famous people in their underwear for a living. Sounds totally crazy. That's also why that is my business card. I am also a survivor of domestic abuse. I was in an abusive relationship that started when I was in college and lasted for about 6 years. It was not, for the most part, physically abusive. It was emotionally and psychologically abusive, and he was also a serial cheater. He was also a psychologist, which is why I call him Hannibal. So I was a sociology major, and when I told Hannibal that I wanted to switch over to fashion, he said I was crazy and that I would never be able to do it. But I did it anyway, and I ended up moving to Los Angeles and becoming an event stylist for Luke Wilson. At that time, Hannibal and I were long distance. He was living in New York, and he asked me to move in with him. So I moved to New York, and 1 month in, I realized that he was cheating on me with 2 of his coworkers, and I confronted him about it, and we got into a huge fight. The fight got out of hand. He pinned me down and had me in a chokehold when his roommate called the cops. The cops came and they immediately separated us to try to figure out what was going on. I was in one room telling them what had happened, and he was in another room telling them that I was suicidal. Because of his credentials, they immediately had to take me to the closest psychiatric facility for 72 hours for evaluation. And that was a huge betrayal. But the true crime was that was what I was wearing when they arrested me. Yeah. So they put me in handcuffs. They took me to Metropolitan Hospital, and the cops were so nice. They were like, "You are not a threat to yourself. You'll be out of here in no time." But when they took my vitals, my heartbeat was 164 beats per minute, and they thought I was on drugs. So they kept me there for the full 72 hours. 12 hours in, I realized I had a meeting with Luke's assistant the next day. I told my doctors, I have to be at work. I can't stay here. And they were like, cool. Well, you can get out if you pass an interview with our social worker. So the social worker asked me the one question that I could not answer truthfully if I wanted to sound sane, which was, what do you do for a living? And I was like, I'm an accountant. So they let me go. And they gave me a paper that said I had an unspecified episodic mood disorder, which is essentially any diagnosis you can give to somebody that works in fashion. And I went home, back to Texas. I started a long recovery process from not only that trauma, but also from the abuse of the relationship. And when I tried talking about it, I realized that people regarded being a celebrity stylist and being a survivor of abuse kind of the same way. I would tell them, and they would be impressed, and then intimidated, and then like run away screaming. So talking was out. Instead, I took up running, and I also started working for my friend Gail. Gail and I are standing in front of a straitjacket here, which I swear to God is a complete coincidence, but also relevant because she's a fashion designer too. So that was part of my recovery process for sure, and I also started seeing a trauma counselor, and she started incorporating new stuff that I hadn't tried, like watercolor and sculpture and apothecary, and eventually, I liked doing that so much that I was able to start a small business called St. John's Studio. Once I started the studio, I felt better creatively and more confident. So I decided to start styling again because I was 100% unable to do that after that happened. Could not do that job. When I started styling again, it was extremely difficult. It brought up so much stuff about that event and about working in LA. And after years and years of hard work and pushing through it, I finally started doing it again. And this past January, I styled a, it's gonna be
They may not know how to two-step, but no doubt.
I styled a Super Bowl commercial. It was huge. And I also really wanted to end on that note for this speech because oh my God, what a huge moment. It's so positive. But I'm also not trying to sell you a summer blockbuster on trauma recovery, so that's just not how trauma works. Trauma is on its own timeline, and I'm still working through my process, definitely. And also, my travel recovery has become very much a part of my creative process, running and all of my creative outlets, and also all of the friends that I've made doing this job and during my recovery. And finally, like, maybe the best visualization tool that I have is that if I'm ever having a really hard time with something, think I'm not gonna get through it, I like to stand up straight, and I take a deep breath, and I close my eyes, and I pretend like I'm Jodie Foster accepting my Academy Award for Silence of the Lambs, and I tell myself that if I can survive Hannibal, I can survive anything.
About 2006, I started receiving this slew of phone calls. It was almost a bit stalkerish. This person just kept calling me every single day for 2 months. When I finally answered the phone at the end of 2 months, it was by a guy named Ry Cooter, famed musician and guitarist. Ry, immediately in that first conversation, had me by the hook. He was talking 100 miles an hour. I had this crazy idea about building this ice cream truck. He said, look, you're the only guy for this job. Just trust me. Get on a plane, come to Los Angeles. You must work with me on this collaborative project. So I flew out west, then eventually moved to Los Angeles, and Ry started talking about this wacky idea about restoring this old ice cream truck. There was a good humor truck and half lowrider. My job was to come in and use the surface of the truck as my canvas to tell the story, the lost and the forgotten story of the Chavez Ravine. The Chavez Ravine was one of the earliest neighborhoods in Los Angeles, an urban setting that was right at the outskirts of downtown. It was made up of dominantly 3 neighborhoods, La Loma, Bishop, and Palo Verde. These neighborhoods were home to about 1,300 to 1,500 Mexican-American families. Many who had been there for several generations were mostly working class and poor families. At that time, the area called Chavez Ravine was being targeted by the Los Angeles Housing Authority. There was the head of the Housing Authority was led by the man named Frank Wilkinson. Frank Wilkinson had this really amazing and crazy idea about making an example of what America could be, a country that took care of its poor and that eventually became anti-poverty. So he was on this quest to use the Housing Authority to build public housing projects that were free of the rough living conditions of slums. But immediately, he was called un-American for his socialist views. So in 1949 to 1950, this battle started ensuing between the Housing Authority, between the residents, and between corporate and real estate developers who had their eyes on the area of the ravine. Men like J. Edgar Hoover, head of the FBI, opened up a folder on Frank Wilkinson, Mayor Norris Poulsen, and Walter O'Malley, the owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers. By 1954, the Brooklyn Dodgers were looking for a new home. The city of Los Angeles lured them out west, and rumor has it that Frank Wilkinson, Walter O'Malley, owner of the Dodgers, along with Chief William Parker of the LAPD and Mayor Norris Poulsen, hovered over the ravine in a helicopter, and when Walter O'Malley asked about, but what about those homes down there? Mayor Norris Poulsen responded, oh, there's nobody there, it's just a bunch of vacant houses with a few squatters. Eventually, for 10 years, this battle ensued, and by 1959, the city handed the entire property, all of the land, to Walter O'Malley and the new home of the Los Angeles Dodgers. All of the residents were eventually evicted by 1959, and Dodger Stadium was erected, and the first pitch was thrown in 1961. When asked why I committed 2 years of my life to this project, I always thought about the quote by the great American social critic and writer Gore Vidal, who once stated, "We are the United States of amnesia. We learn nothing because we remember nothing."
Okay, I'm gonna try this microphone thing. Okay, so I'm coming here to Austin because of two projects. I've been working with the Blanton to photograph the Ellsworth Kellys Austin. And I also work with this arts collective called Meow Wolf. This image that you're looking at here is our new Denver location, in the works. I wanted to show my work of Ellsworth Kellys Austin with you all. It's a serene study in light, form, and color. It's an immersive experience. But unfortunately, we have copyright restrictions on the work, which means I can't show it tonight. I apologize. But thank you to the Blanton team. You guys were great to work with. Instead, I'm just going to show you a little bit of my architecture work because it is the work that taught me how to do what I do as a commercial photographer, which eventually led me to my work with Meow Wolf. Working with great architects and designers taught me the impact of light and line. It taught me how to manipulate these elements so that you can see what I want you to see. And it taught me about collaboration. I'm a conduit for other people's visions. As a professional photographer, I've also noticed that my assignments tend to come from the top down. Publishers, clients, editors, all with good reason. These people know the craft, they know what they want, they're really good. But the things that really get me excited are the stories and subjects that come from the ground up. Back to that conduit thing. Using my commercial photo skills, I can help execute other people's visions and bring them to a larger audience. Everyone should have the access to the tools of image and media making, just like the way they get to learn how to read and write. Mary Ellen Mark said a few years back, people digest more images per week than words, which is totally something to think about. So until the playing fields are leveled, I've been offering myself up as a tool. So about 7 years ago, I started to make this offer to my friends. This is a Scuba Ice Pop. It's a gallery installation at the CCA in Santa Fe. I'm going to try to take you through a couple of the folks that have collaborated with me. The next one that you're going to see is an artist called Rose Simpson. She's a Santa Claran artist. The Santa Claran Pueblo is known for black and black pottery of Maria Tafoya. The Pueblo is also located near Espanola, New Mexico, the lowrider capital of the world. Rose's piece here, Maria, is an 85 El Camino detailed in black on black, a nod to both the Pueblo and the Espanola. These photos now get to tour the country because her car can't, it overheats. And then that led me to this work with the lowrider community, the women in the lowrider community. So again, the same invitation stood. Use me as a tool to create the images you want. The OG veteranas took up the offer. The first image was the one I relate to. The second one is one that they really wanted. It showcases them in front of the Santa Cruz Church, something that is really close to them. I'm still trying to figure out an output for this project. Gallery isn't quite right, magazine sorta, but the question of who makes the content and who the audience is keeps coming back to me. This is the Ricochet Project. Before photography, I worked in the circus business for 15 years. I did everything. I met these two. I did performance. This performance duo is one of the best in the United States. We did promo shots. We've done performance shots together. We performed together. What you see here is us taking the opportunity to work together to deconstruct their show. And we shot it around northern New Mexico. And their show is about gender and the boxes that we sort of stuff people in. This story to the last image on this section is, I'm going to try to get through the short version of it. This got censored. The image on the left is the one that got censored. There was this a male guest editor at a magazine. He thought I was objectifying women. It's a position she puts herself in. It's an acrobatic position. She takes the tail and she wraps it around her head. She's in total control. But what it led to was us to follow up and do the next one, which was my kitchen remodel. I'm going to jump on to the next bit. This brings me to Meow Wolf. This guy is our landlord, George R. Martin. We started as an arts collective. There's this crazy idea to build an immersive arts experience in an old bowling alley that would be a for-profit business with the goal of keeping artists employed. We went for it. We figured we might break even and be exhausted by the effort, but it would be fun. It has been really successful, maybe you've heard. We're expanding to new markets. We recently announced plans for Denver and Las Vegas. We've also been exploring Austin as a possible new location. Yeah. So in addition to exploring the new locations, we're also working to find ways to support art groups and projects around the country that are already doing the great things where they are. DIY spaces, art collectives, crazy ideas, and beyond. The ghost ship tragedy stuck really close to home for a lot of people in Meow Wolf. So after that, we started a fund, and we've been giving out, I think we gave out $500,000 last year to collectives around the country. We're looking to do the same again this year, and hoping that other businesses and individuals will join in the giving side of it, because they see the value of supporting this type of work. It is really important that there continue to be places where people can go and be and create and do shit, especially in this era of high-speed change. So many good ideas come from the ground up, which is one of the things I learned from the magazine land. So I'm an artist and I'm a photographer with Meow Wolf, and I've been involved on and off since 2011. I got involved because of the simple invite I kept talking about. I asked people to use me as a conduit to express their ideas, and Meow Wolf did. The selection of photos that you've been looking at, they show both conceptual photos that we did well before the build happened, and final shots of the actual build. I'm gonna jump a little bit. We're digging deep and then on the planning. We're in the permitting stages in Denver, and it's kind of complicated. We're trying to write permits for portals. It's a little strange. But we're also digging deep on the conversation that go with this kind of expansion. We've been listening to communities that we're gonna be working with, and we're trying to bring our experience to the table and listen to theirs. We're trying to work in collaboration. We're going to be on the ground here in Austin for South by Southwest, and with our documentary film premiere, Meow Wolf, The Origin Story. It's really strange, there's a movie. And a VR premiere. We also, I think, are having a big party with some installations and a few other surprises, so look for us. And continue the conversation with us and continue the collaboration with us, because that's where it comes from. We appreciate it all. So, thank you.
So I'm inspired a lot by old books, and my grandmother kind of got me off into being a book collector. This is one of the rarest of all the hobo books, and everybody that's into hobo graffiti and monikers and all that knows A number one, who is Leon Livingston, and he influenced me to do this piece with the forgotten nomenclature of the hobo. I love old colloquialisms, words that have kind of gone out of fashion, and from watching old movies and listening to music, you know, like a word will stick in my mind, and in a way, I guess I'm doing these heads to preserve this kind of nomenclature that seems to be disappearing. So for anything, the purpose, I guess, for me is just to remember some of this stuff for myself. And I've come up with this phrenology head that started out as kind of an empty kind of punk rock head that I would draw on t-shirts back in the 80s. And so through visiting people like Reverend J.L. Hunter, he was a Baptist minister in Dallas, my wife Juli and I would go and visit him every Monday and buy his amazing wood carvings that he would see a limb that had fallen off a tree and turn it into a man or a woman. Another Texan big influence on me is Reverend Johnny Swearingen, and this is his house in Brenham, Texas, around 1987, with his really beautiful oil paintings with kind of open window houses, and you're looking into the interiors of houses. Swearingen wanted to paint so bad, he taught himself to paint with shoe polish. This is Jameson Thomas, who lived in Leland, Mississippi. He was an incredible blues musician and a sculptor of mud heads. He took Mississippi mud, mixed it with plaster of Paris and some water, sculpted it with his hands, spray painted it, and there you go. So some of my friends influenced me, feathered friends definitely, and people like Jameson Thomas, Swearingen, and Reverend Hunter for sure. Again, I'm kind of inspired by the names of birds, saving my favorites, and again in this kind of phrenology head thing. So this year I had the opportunity to go and do a aqua tint sugar lift painting at Flatbed Press here in Austin, and this is the fruits of the labor. We did an edition of 4 prints, 10 each, and this is sort of the test pressing. I did a book about fraternal lodge art with Lynn Adele a couple of years ago with University of Texas Press. This is a magic lantern slide of an alchemist in his chambers, and it's one of my favorite images in the book. The colors are so vibrant and everything. So if anybody is interested in fraternal lodge art, look for our book, As Above, So Below, Art of the American Fraternal Society. David Byrne really wrote a beautiful foreword for our book, and it's just chock full of incredible images of American fraternal art. This is an interior shot of the show that we have up right now at Webb Gallery, Waxahachie. We recently were able to go through Jonathan Shaw's collection of vintage tattoo flash and pick out about 60 pieces. So you're seeing works by vintage tattoo artists from around 100 years ago. One of my big inspirations, William S. Burroughs, the writer, who also was a painter. I got a chance to meet him in the mid-'80s, and we'd go up and visit him up in Lawrence, Kansas. And the very first exhibition we did at the gallery in 1984 was of William's art and Bill Daniels' photography. This is Ike Edward Morgan, who lives here in Austin. Webb Gallery has been representing Ike since about 1993. He paints portraits of U.S. presidents. He paints Mona Lisa, Yertle the Turtle, any of the Dr. Seuss characters, that kind of thing. Hawkins Bolden, who was a blind gardener and sculptor in Memphis, Tennessee. His house was right behind the Antenna Club, which was kind of an early punk rock venue in Memphis. So people used to see his art in his backyard outside the club. So this is an environment you can go up and see. It's in Niagara Falls, New York. It's Prophet Isaiah Robertson's environment. I think he calls it the House of the Apocalypse. He's continuing to work on it. It's mostly wood, painted meticulously, and he said the patterns come to him in dreams and visions. You can see some of the detail here of some of the designs on the house. It's an incredible environment, not too far from the falls in Niagara Falls, New York. So another total environmental artist is Lloyd Bolin, the legendary rhinestone cowboy who lived in Macomb, Mississippi. And rhinestone cowboy's environment was in danger of being destroyed after he passed away. And through a lady who had the foresight to get it, it's now on view at the Sheboygan Art Center in Wisconsin. Royal Robertson, another big influence, and an environmental artist who lived in Baldwin, Louisiana. He was a sign painter by trade, but he would have visions of flying saucers and could render them down to you and tell you things that completely boggle my mind. Mystery of the ages. I think an unsolved mystery has the power to make someone go to the ends of the earth. So I'm really interested in unsolved mysteries. And I started trying to paint an owl, but it kind of wound up looking like one of my Boston Terriers here. Again, another phrenology head with all kinds of occult venues and things that an occultist might have up in their lair. So yeah, I'm interested in all that kind of stuff. There you go. Thank you.
So I wrote this book called Spineless, and then the subtitle is The Science of Jellyfish and the Art of Growing a Backbone. And I didn't start off as a jellyfish scientist, but I did start off as an ocean scientist. I got my PhD in ocean science, and what I studied was satellite imagery of the ocean. And this kind of beautiful stuff, but what I really studied was this term in the middle that looks kind of like musical notes, and no one could really understand me. So I kind of bailed out of the academic world and fell in love, moved to Central Texas away from the ocean, and I started writing textbooks. And that was okay for a while, but I felt like mainstream work was more interesting, and so I got the chance to work for National Geographic a little bit.
And not big things, little things, like I wrote the captions for this piece, which is about ocean acidification, which is what happens when carbon dioxide mixes with water and forms an acid and dissolves shells. And in that piece, there was this graphic that I was supposed to fact check that said, who's gonna do well in a future ocean, or who's gonna do poorly, things with shells, and then who's gonna do well, and I saw jellyfish on that list, and I thought, really, how much do we know about what jellyfish will do? So I Googled it, as one does, and I found out that jellyfish were taking over the oceans and it might be too late, and that they might be our overlords. And this surprised me because I hadn't heard about this. And I was really very, very curious. So being a scientist, I went and looked in the scientific literature, and I found out that jellyfish, there was a little bit of data, this is from Japan, and it showed that jellyfish were causing problems in 3 ways: by clogging power plants, by messing up beaches, and by getting in fisheries nets. And it did look like maybe things were getting a little bit worse throughout time. So I said to my husband, it's spring break, let's go to Alabama. And he was like, why? And I said, because I want to talk to some jellyfish scientists there. So we took our kids and he watched them and I talked to the jellyfish scientists. And they told me, like, oh my gosh, amazing things about jellyfish that I had never known before. And for example, the longest animal in the world is the jellyfish. This one's 120 feet, but blue whales are only 100 feet. The smallest animal in the world lives inside fish eggs, and it's 10 microns. The oldest mussel is jellyfish mussel. It's 560 million years old, and the fastest motion comes from the stinging cell, which explodes. At 5 million times the acceleration of gravity, astronauts can only handle 10 times that. This guy is an immortal jellyfish. It can age forwards and backwards like Benjamin Button. I mean, it's not immortal because the ocean isn't full of them because they get eaten by fish and things, but it technically could live forever. So I said to my family, let's get some pets. And we got peanut butter and jelly. And that was good because I could sit and watch peanut butter and jelly and say, like, do you see me? Because I see you. And can you hear me? Because I talk to you sometimes. And what I learned is that jellyfish do have faces. They're very, very small pieces. This is a box jellyfish. It's kind of like the hawk of the jellyfish world. It has 4 faces around it. Each one has 6 eyes. The 2 center eyes actually have a lens, a retina, and an iris that opens and closes when it's dark and light. They also have these sort of things like we have in our ears, which are crystals and nerves that tell the jellyfish which way is up and which way is down. And so the scientists sent about 5,000 jellyfish into outer space to understand why astronauts were getting sick when they went up to space. I also learned that our oceans are becoming there's more jellyfish around. The orange and the red places are parts of our coastlines where jellyfish numbers are up. And so at this point I was like, I gotta go to the red place. So I went, I said, Japan, I need to go to Japan. And I did. I chased the biggest jellyfish in the world, which can grow to be 500 pounds. This one's a puny one at 250 pounds. And then I also got to go out commercial jellyfishing. Oh, I forgot to tell you something really good about that, but I won't get to fit it in. I'll tell you later if you ask me. So I went commercial jellyfishing, and they've been eating jellyfish in Asia for about 1,000 years. And there is an abundance of these jellyfish now in Japan, but they've fished them out of China. So it's kind of an interesting thing. I ate them at the commercial jellyfisherman's house, and they tasted like green pepper. By this point, the jellyfish scientists were telling me about a problem, which is that the Suez Canal was being doubled in size, and they were really worried because they thought invasive species could go through this larger body of water, in particular jellyfish. No environmental impact assessment had been done. So I pitched it to the New York Times. They took it. I thought things would change after the world knew about this big project with no impact, but nothing happened. So I said we have to take another trip, and we went to Israel, where I first fell in love with the ocean, and my kids were really into this jellyfish trip. And what I found out there was that the predictions of the scientists were correct. This jellyfish is called the nomadic jellyfish. It came through the Suez Canal. It now blankets the eastern Mediterranean tens of kilometers every summer, and it stops up power plants and drives people from the beach. It's a really bad stinger. I took one last trip to Spain with just my husband this time, and what we found there was in this area where jellyfish have become pervasive, they have to put nets along about 40 kilometers of the coastline in order to swim. And to me, it looked like we were building our own prison. I called the book Spineless because jellyfish are indeed spineless, and they're amazing, and all of their adaptations that make them so amazing are because of their spinelessness. I also called it Spineless because they forced me to overcome my spinelessness and to say who I was as a woman and as a writer and as a person with a voice. But lastly, I named it Spineless because we're drifting into a place with our oceans where I really don't believe we want to be. And we can change it, but we're gonna collectively have to grow a spine.
I learned to surf when I was in my 20s, and as an engineer, I thought, oh shoot, I can do this. I can bring waves to my home state of Colorado. But fast forward a couple decades, and ended up with this piece of land in Austin, which is beautiful in its own right, and just east of the airport, and the intention was to build a surf lagoon. This was what I had in mind when we bought this piece of land, and it started there, but perfect waves happen, and following an ocean engineer is kind of hard, but perfect waves happen every 2 minutes at our site, but the difficulty was it only happens in nature every once in a while. Inland is a culmination of working with DJ and his team, Pentagram, and the mantra "Make Waves" came from that as well. So that's our kind of our flagship brand there. As we broke ground, miles from the coastline, you can see this overhead shot, and we really needed to work on what our story was. That's where DJ and his team came through. So Make Waves is what we do, and inland is who we are and where we are. This is a panoramic shot during 2015 that shows the ranch land that surrounds inland. And the inspiration around this was not to build a surf spot in Austin, but to build Austin a surf spot, which means it really had to be Texas. So about a year later, and more than a few challenges, we came up with this thing. And this picture is a picture of the dedication ceremony that we had. And the interesting story is, and I'll probably miss my timing here a lot, but I contacted 5 or 6 pastors and friends that I knew could dedicate the land before we opened. None of them could do it, and the personal thing for me was to learn that I had to do it. So we had a great moment as a team dedicating the space. And here you go. This is our party wave. This is where people can surf all together, or you can surf as a solo person. Beginner wave here is where we teach people and youth how to surf our spot. And this is our whitewater wave, which is tons of fun. We have lefts and rights, and it runs every 2 minutes, which means that the wave runs both directions in our lagoon. This is a picture of our surf director, John, and medium. So we like to make fun of John every St. Valentine's Day. And last year was a box of chocolates and him in a wetsuit. This year, he redeemed himself because he married Miriam, his girlfriend. Here's our kids that came as part of our first surf camp last year. These kids didn't know how to surf. They all signed up, they came out, and you can see on their faces how much they love surfing. Good, I'm catching up here. Scarlett is one of our surf coaches, and surf coaches are the heart of what inland is all about. Scarlett injured herself as a kid. She was an Olympic hopeful in swimming. She injured her shoulder, learned how to surf, became our head surf guide, and now teaches kids from all over how to surf. And actually, we have more women surfers by double what the average population of surfers have in the world. This is Harry. He's another result of an injury, or he almost lost his leg. And he came to us from Kauai with lots of surf cred, and he's our most requested coach last year. This is Shane Beshen's son. Shane Beshen is a world-famous surfer, the only one to get a perfect 30, perfect 10, 3 times on a wave in a row. Noah Beshen is his son, and he came out to surf with us. Now, this just kind of shows you what we can do on the waves that we created inland. This is Axel Irons. Axel Irons is the son of Andy Irons, who's a late beloved surfer. And Axel's kind of surf royalty. He's a only descendant of a very famous surfer. And you can see the joy on his face. And this is what we create at inland. It's just wonderful to see such a great kid coming out to enjoy himself. Here's a group that we didn't expect to come, and this is from a convalescent home, and they came out on a field trip. But they are two or three World War II veterans here, and they came out to see the surf park just because they'd heard about it. So it's quite an honor to have them out there, and really appreciate that, and we get that daily. Camille Stiles and her husband, Adam, came to visit, and Camille had never surfed. Adam was from San Diego and knew how to surf. But Camille was able to put herself out there to learn something she was scared to do, and she was really helpful in getting our business going. These are our beers. This is a fun shot. Our brewer, head brewer Todd Henry, loves lagers and pilsners, which made me fall in love with him because that's my favorite too. And this is a Kenny Braun photo. This shows you the scale and breadth of what we have at inland. It's an enormous facility with a great wave through the middle of it. And you can see this was taken our opening day, and most of our employees are out there cheering us on. Picture of what you'd see from our brewery at sunset. We have the most amazing sunsets at inland, and it's not something we designed or planned. It's just something that happened. It's really spectacular. So, and the last photo here is from Zach Noyle. And it'll pop up in a second, but it gives you the idea of what it is to be inside a wave and what drives surfers to be so passionate about what they do. So I've had the pleasure of following my passion for the last 4 years and developing a surf location right here in Austin. I'm so excited. Austin's welcomed me. DJ's been great, and his team, and just fantastic being here in Austin. And hopefully someday I can call this place a home like I do in Colorado.
My name is Wendy Colonna. Hi. Oh, look, there's me. I got to start. I've been a musician for 20 years. I've played for everybody, the top percent, homeless people, babies, hospice patients. It's been a great honor to be a musician. But about 8 years ago, I hit rock bottom, and I almost quit music. I was a workaholic who measured success by outdated industry standards, and I was paying for it with my health. I was broke, sick, out of touch with everything I thought I stood for and I believed in. I was exhausted and my immune system crashed. And I stayed sick on the road for 8 months. I was too sick to keep chasing a dream that seemed to be killing me, so I got off the road. It wasn't music that was sabotaging my own success, but me. I had lost sight of joy, peace, my gifts and blessings. So, like all good Austinites, I went to Barton Springs and sat, thought, did yoga, and hula hooped. I wanted to know my greater purpose. I had a hunch that was bigger and different than anything I'd known before, so I abandoned everyone else's version of success and started quantifying my accomplishments by how they made me feel. I yearned for connection, abundance, family, and joy, and I figured, why not? After a few months of shifting my worldview, the world literally started to magically open before me. It started with a solo tour in Europe that brought together all these fine musicians from Belgium into an album that paid for itself in 2 gigs, which was really different than my ideas of touring and record releasing. I wanted to do more community service, and wham, shortly after returning home from that tour, I was invited to co-produce a holiday event, an album for the Health Alliance for Austin Musicians. 3 years and 3 successful events and albums later, we have raised $31,000 for HAM, and here I am, there I was with my co-producers. I wanted to become more confident leader and hone my musical skills, and boom, I was offered a career position for a little while as a church music director. And every week I studied all these ancient hymns and did well. This is a slide of me teaching a workshop in Logan, Utah. I started working with aspiring musicians in university departments to help them hone their business skills. They had musical backgrounds, but didn't have really great musical business skills, and that's weird, because it's a weird industry. This is me releasing my amazing record, Nectar. I never thought I'd make a record again, and there I was in the studio doing it my way with a producer and a team who helped bring it to life. And then I got this call to write a song for Coca-Cola. And this ad was mentioned in Ad Week. It was also all over movies and television for a good season, and it had a great paycheck, which was one of the things that really moved me, because abundance was something that I wanted to create in my world. It was really hard to reach. The folks back home called me and said, "Would you like to write and produce a song that celebrates our culture?" And I said, yes. I ended up spending a couple of months making a beautiful ad for Southwest Louisiana. This is me in the Grand Tetons. One of the great things that I've gathered over time is just being present with the things that move and inspire and connect us. And that was me just wishing. This is a picture of me and Woody Guthrie. I decided to be home free for about 2 years and dedicate my life to the road. And that's us embarking on that tour. When I got back to Austin, I bought this vintage camper. We called it Tips after the tips I paid for it with. And we built a deck and a roof and made a beautiful house concert venue. This is my way of giving back to the community here. We have 3 seasons so far that have been incredible. My partner, Mark Addison, and I started to work on my next record, No Moment But Now. And it was great. Where most albums are pressure cookers, No Moment But Now was a slow cooker. We spent about a year and a half working on the record, writing and putting together all the instruments. And then boom, I got married. My partner and I were old friends, and we realized after swinging a lot of hammers on that deck and roof that we had more to do in life. These are my stepkids and my granddaughter. And this is me winning the Black Fret grant last year. One of the major grants. Black Fret gives money to musicians who do excellent things, and I'm so honored they chose me in 2016. It allowed me to fund my album release before having a baby. And this opportunity, I was asked, a lot of my songs are uplifting and spiritual and remember the heart focus in life, and I got asked to play the Women's March last January in front of 50,000+ people with a couple of my peers. And this is my baby, Charlie. My wonderful light. He's wearing my album t-shirt. And with Charlie came new challenges in creating music and in creating opportunity with business, but I'm up for the opportunity. I'm really standing up. I've been working. I've been making beautiful music, and my little one sings all the time. My stepdaughter's an amazing singer. We have a wonderful life, and music is crazy and wonderful and strange, and the business is tanked. And yet, with all these different opportunities, I'm making it work. It's an industry that has no market value, and yet it's the most essential thing we have as humans to connect us, right? Music. So here's a song for you. I hope you sing along with it. It's called Nothing Gonna Take My Love. Well, nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. Nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. Not fear, not greed, not jealousy. Nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. Can y'all sing that with me? Fear, greed, jealousy, it's alphabetical order. That's all you have to remember, because the rest just says nothing gonna take my love. You wanna do it? All right, put your hands together, come on. I don't have a band. You are my band. Let's do it. Nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. Nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. Nothing gonna take my love from me, not fear, not greed, not jealousy. Nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. Beautiful. May my eyes be bright and may my heart be light. May my hands be filled with grace. When the shadows fall, let me light them all. Let me smile in trouble's face. I am love in truth. I taste love inspired. I breathe that. I breathe love on fire. My ego exhales and lets go now, now. I am love. Y'all sing it with me here. Well, ain't nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. Nothing gonna take my love from me, no, 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 no. Ain't nothing gonna take my love from me, not fear, not greed, not jealousy. Nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. May I stand long through suffering's wind strong. May I root and spread my wings. May I swim in seas of forgiveness. May my body always sing, yeah, yeah. Nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. Yeah, nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. Not fear, not greed, not jealousy. Nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. May I sow the seeds of generosity. May I dance and laugh and stride. May my mind be still with humility and surrender all my pride. Well, yeah, nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. Yeah, nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. No, 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 no. love from me. Not fear, not greed, not jealousy. Nothing gonna take my love. Well, I said nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. Nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. Nothing gonna take my love from me, not fear, not greed, not jealousy. Nothing gonna take my love from me, no, no. Well, I said nothing gonna take my love.